Today I wanted to compare what healthy relationships look like compared to codependent relationships. And I recently did a video where I talked about one of the things needed to break out of codependency is learning or becoming educated as to what healthy relationships look like. If we go by what we were taught, 9 times out of 10, we're probably going to wind up in an unhealthy, toxic relationship because our parents, if they didn't heal, if they were living life unconscious, if they were codependent, or if they were victims of emotional abuse in one way, shape, or form, then it normally gets passed on. If you don't learn what healthy relationships look like, how to have healthy relationships, you'll just keep recreating the dynamics that you went through in childhood, and who wants to do that? So if you want to make sure that your relationships are healthy, or that you're going in a direction so that your relationships can become more healthy, then watch this video. So let's first talk about what healthy relationships look like. Before you can have a healthy relationship, you have to have 2 whole individuals. Okay? One person in a relationship plus another whole person in a relationship are 2 people creating a relationship together. What does that mean? So somebody that's whole is somebody that has a sense of self, has a self-identity, who knows their own values. It's somebody that knows how to have self-integrity. This is what self-integrity is. It's a way by which we start with complete and utter honesty with ourselves. It's our agreement and constant alignment with our values, dreams, goals, and hopes. It's deciding what you want and doing what you tell yourself that you're going to do. Self-integrity involves self-discipline. There's an absence of paralyzing fear. It's not that people that have self-integrity have no fear, but the fear doesn't stop them. So even when they're afraid to do things, people that have self-integrity, if what they're going to do is in alignment with their values and their goals, then they strive after it. Something else that's involved with self-integrity is honoring the voice within. So sometimes we'll be in a situation where we'll hear that whisper telling us, pay attention to that, or that's not a good idea, or do that, go for it. Whatever it is, we'll hear it. And somebody that is or has self-integrity listens to that voice because that voice comes from self and they have that connection to self. So a person that's whole has self-integrity. Something else that they have is the ability to validate their worth through their own eyes. In other words, they know they're imperfect. A person that can do that doesn't think that they're perfect. They recognize that they're imperfect. They recognize that they have strengths and weaknesses, but their weaknesses or their flaws don't take away from their value in their own eyes, and they don't need someone else to validate that in order for them to believe it. They're able to generate that self-value and self-worth from inside of self. So a person like that is whole, right? And like attracts like. So people like that tend to attract people that are similar. So you have 2 individuals in one relationship creating something beautiful. The relationship doesn't define either one of them. It enhances their happiness. So notice, it doesn't make them happy because people that are whole are able to generate happiness from within. So they're able to have that happiness and bring it to the relationship, so it enhances their happiness. The relationship with 2 whole people doesn't define them. It doesn't make them who they are. It just adds to their life experience. Okay, that's a healthy interdependent relationship. And something else that's interesting about a healthy interdependent relationship is the fact that if for whatever reason the relationship ends, both individuals, obviously it's not going to feel good and they're going to have to work through some feelings as a result of the loss, but they're still two whole individuals. And so they're not at a place like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Or without this relationship, no one's ever going to love me again. There's not that desperation when you're dealing with two whole people. However, that's not the experience with so many people, especially if you've been in toxic relationships, especially if you were raised with toxic parents who weren't whole themselves. And so now they've kind of passed it down to their children, right? So what does that look like? What happens when you have that codependency? How can you differentiate what a healthy relationship looks like from a codependent relationship? Well, unlike two wholes that are coming together to create something beautiful, codependents are almost like, I remember, I think it was Ross Rosenberg, either in his book or in one of his videos, he said that codependence or codependent and narcissistic relationships are like two halves of one person. So instead of two people in the relationship, it's almost like one half of a person and another half of a person makes one person in a codependent enmeshed relationship. So what does that look like? So somebody that's codependent would need somebody outside of self to validate them. So normally they're striving after the approval of this person. They're striving to prove their worth. And then when that person gives them that sense of worth, then they feel good. But it's almost like without that person validating and noticing and seeing that person, there's an inability to see it themselves and to generate validation from within. So it's the same thing with happiness. I talked about in a whole relationship, in a complete relationship that's healthy, both individuals are generating happiness from within and bringing it and adding to the happiness of the other person. But in a codependent relationship, the person almost needs someone else to be happy. When they can make someone else happy, then they feel good. They feel happy within. And as a result, the relationship feels like if you lose it, you're losing a piece of self, because in a sense you kind of are. It's all meshed together so that it creates that feeling of, without this relationship, I can't be happy. Without this relationship, I can't feel enough. Those are the feelings that can come about when you're dealing with a codependent relationship. There's almost like a desperation to have or keep the relationship, even if a piece of you knows that it's toxic and not good for you. The individuals in a codependent relationship lack self-integrity. What does that look like? If you don't have integrity, you feel a lot of guilt. You do things that maybe you don't want to simply because you would feel guilty if you didn't, since someone else wants you to. So rather than having the integrity to stand behind your feelings and what you need, you abandon those feelings and needs in order to do whatever that other person wants you to. Something else that reveals a lack of self-integrity is comparing yourself to others. You have to always measure yourself as to what others are or aren't doing, what others have or don't have, in order to feel good, because again, you're not able to generate that from within. Something else is being hyper vigilant as to how much you're pleasing other people. You have to constantly do something, say yes, be the nice guy or nice girl, so that the other person can say, wow, you're a good person. And then that person, you're pleasing them. You think you're pleasing them by sacrificing self or allowing your fear to make you do that, fear of authenticity. And they give you that payoff, and then you think, okay, I am a good person. But you're sacrificing your authenticity to get that approval from someone else. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention, and there's plenty to mention, but just to give you a kind of an idea of a lack of self-integrity, is that you wind up walking around in life almost like an empty shell in an effort to please other people. I see this a lot in my coaching, where I get people that are in narcissistic relationships where the narcissist has basically erased them So now they're a shell of a person. They have stopped doing things that they were passionate about. They have stopped being close to people that they were close to because the other person didn't like it. So they've erased themselves in an effort to either please that person or because of fear that that person was going to get angry. That's what happens in a codependent relationship. In a codependent relationship, there is a lack of balance in the relationship. There is one person needing validation and seeking the validation, and the other person granting it if and when they choose. Or there is one person seeking the other person to fulfill or heal their emotional wounds inside. So rather than doing the inner work to heal themselves, they look to the other person to heal those wounds. If they don't feel enough, they strive to get that person to see them as enough, and then they think that's healing the wound. But they're not really doing the inner work to see that they are worthy through their own eyes. And if a codependent relationship winds up falling apart, which it tends to do, right? Because it's not healthy, it's not in balance, then the person or the people that were in the relationship, there's it's almost like you don't feel whole. Like you feel so broken that it's very difficult to move forward because, in a sense, the other person was your other half. And we tend to use that phrase a lot, my other half, in a positive way. And it is a beautiful thing. You want that person to be your significant other, but you want to be two whole people that are together. So I'm hoping this video, and I know not just one video can clear everything up, but I'm hoping this video can at least help you to start analyzing where are you, right? And everything's on a scale. You can have healthy narcissism, and then it can go up to malignant narcissism, and then it can go all the way down to codependency. So we're all on this scale, but at some point or another, we have to self-evaluate. We have to look at where on the scale are we, and is that working for us? Is it helping us to live an authentic life with self-integrity, with the ability to validate ourselves, with the ability to generate happiness and a sense of complete and wholeness? Or are we seeking all of the things that we need in a relationship? And then even if we recognize that we're doing that, all we have to do is start taking the steps to heal. Heal the wounds instead of trying to get somebody else to heal them. I was talking with a client once, and he said, you know, I realize that I tend to try to get my emotional needs met through a relationship. And he said, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Maybe for a second it feels good, but the hole is still there. So if you're striving to have your inner wounds healed through a relationship, the first step is awareness. The second step is being willing to learn how to break out of those patterns. And once you do, like I said in the beginning of this video, like attracts like. You can attract somebody that will enrich your life, that will help you to be happier, because you'll be having your happiness and they'll be enriching that happiness. And then you'll be free of all external toxic relationships and anything inside of you that might attract them as well.